Hi, it's Talia from Clay About Designs here today, showing you my watercolour tear technique or faux watercolour tear technique that was inspired by Jessima Tutorials. Here's some examples of work I've made with this technique. Today I'm going to use Peacock Pearl Primo Accents, Bright Green Pearl Primo Accents, Plain Primo Pearl, and a whole heap of Primo White. So you're going to need a clean work surface for this technique and strips of clay that have been well conditioned and are approximately equal size, but definitely don't need to be the exact same size as we are going to cut it down in a moment. And you just want to make sure they're stuck to your surface. So I'm working on a ceramic tile here. With each different colour of clay, you want to cut strips of varying thicknesses down the length of the clay. Sorry, my hands are in the way here a bit. When you get to the rough edges, just cut really close to them. We will put them aside afterwards. So as you can see, my clay didn't quite stick down well, so I'm just repositioning it, but you can see that the first strip of blue is a lot thinner than the second one, and you just want to cut various sizes like that, some really thin, some quite thick. I'm just putting the scraps to the side there and cleaning off my blade before moving on to the next colour. We don't want any colour transfer. So again, in the green, just cutting different sized strips. You want them to be all over the place. There's no technique to the size of the strips here in this case. And to our last colour, which is actually a mix of the green and the blue that I had left over from another project, but they made a really nice colour. I find this technique works better with more colours. Alright, so I'm just cleaning up the edges there as that piece was quite a lot bigger. Here I'm just making some space on the tile so I can arrange the strips. We're basically going to be making a version of a Skinner blend, but instead of using the traditional triangle shapes, you're going to use the strips of clay. So just getting it all out the way so you guys can see it on camera. And again, this is a bit random, so you just want to choose different colours. You don't really want the same colour next to each other. Varying thicknesses is good too, so there I've got a really thick blue strip next to a green one, and you just want to push them together because at the end we do want to be able to pick them up in a single slab. And you just keep going with this, lining up all the strips until you have none left. And as you can see, I'm not really lining them up perfectly, I just need to end up with a rectangle shape at the end. So I am working from the bottom and trying to line up the bottoms as much as I can, but some strips were much longer than others, and that's fine. We'll cut them up and then separate them back out into their separate colours to use them for other projects, so there's no leftovers that go to waste or get put in the bin. We always use the clay for other projects. And it doesn't matter if they get a bit wonky, so you can see there as I go my strips are getting a little bit less rectangular shape, but that's fine. And there's no pattern to the order of my strips either. so I haven't got it blue, green, white, blue, green, white. I've got it completely random. This particular slab ended up being quite big, so if you don't have a really big pasta machine or you don't have particular depth guides that can handle the length, or fondant guides or pop sticks taped together, I'd probably stop here. I just kept going until I ran out of strips of clay. Which reminds me, the amount of clay I used of each colour was approximately 1/4 of a block. Even the half Primo green and blue ended up being about 1/4 of a block, so I just mixed those two colours together. See, I put a bit of thought into what piece I was going to lay down next. And we've got one last piece to go. Alright, so we're getting our blade here and just cutting the ends so that you do end up with a large rectangle shape. And as I said, just separating the colours back out onto their own so they can be used for future projects. Just a little bit stuck there. And repeating the same on the other side. So you can see that you end up with quite a nice, sharp, crisp edge. And then your stripes all end up being the same length as well. So that's why I wasn't too fussed about it at the beginning. I suppose you could pre-cut rectangles with some shape cutters, and then you'd have to do this a bit less, but I didn't see the point personally. Just pushing it together again to try and end up with a clean slab that we can easily pick up and put through our pasta machine. But as you'll see, it doesn't always work out that way. So I'm just running it from each corner, trying to pick up as much as I can off the tile without taking any gouges out of it. You always get little bits that stick to your knife, that's fine. And just run your fingers along and push together any strips that have come apart. Just a gentle, you just want them to stick together enough that you can put them through your pasta machine and end up with a nice blend. Alright, so that's what we end up with off the tile. Moving over to the pasta machine. I have sped this up. I've shown the first couple of times at real speed, I guess. And then I sped it up because this does take a lot of time. You really want a smooth blend, and the same as with a Skinner blend, you want to fold up the clay so that each colour lines up. So the green should be touching the green when it folds, the white should be touching the white. You don't want it to be touching the colour next to it. You can see I'm spending quite a bit of time here lining it up. If you have to sort of bunch the clay up a bit, that's fine, but you don't want it to be touching a different colour because you'll get a really poor blend. And you can see with the initial pass through the pasta machine that the rectangles came unstuck. So same thing as before, just push them together. Right, so we've got a few at the top there that have come apart, the blue and the white one. That's fine, just fold it in half again, line up each colour and put it through your pasta machine. So here's an example of how I am actually folding my clay. So you can see I'm bunching up some of the clay there to make sure that the blue touches the blue, the white touches the white, the green touches the green, etc. That's fine. I've also had a little bit of colour transfer from my pasta machine, so I'm just taking that off with my knife. Doesn't matter how many times you clean them, there's always colour. Magical piece of glitter or some red clay that magically appears. Now I guess you could do this with a roller, but to be honest this takes quite a lot of time with a pasta machine. You know, at least 30-40 rolls. So I probably wouldn't recommend it. And you can see I'm also now starting to put my finger alongside the clay when I put it through the machine to stop it from spreading too far. And obviously I've sped this up because who wants to watch someone putting clay through a pasta machine all day? Definitely not me. So I've shown the key points here, so you can see I've bunched up the clay again, just to get the emphasis on the technique that I am using. I haven't shown every single roll through the pasta machine. We would have been here for an hour or so. So I'm just folding it, making sure the colours line up, putting it through the machine. One thing I haven't said is the thickness setting. So I've got that on one step down from my thickest setting. So for my pasta machine, 7 is the thickest, so I've got it on a 6. Because the clay that I initially rolled out was the thickest setting, so it was a number 6 on my pasta machine. So I wanted the rectangles to join up quite nicely and blend quite well, so I went one step down to a number 5. So you can see the colours are starting to blend now, getting that Skinner blend effect. It's another reason why people use triangles. It's a lot slower using rectangles to get a nice blend, but for this technique it works quite well. So you can see the white and the teal sort of colour are blending really nicely there. And it doesn't matter if your blend's not perfect, if you get colours that misalign, it's fine. In the end product, it really won't show. So once you're happy with your blend, put it aside and get your slab of Primo White. I think I used a number 4 on my pasta machine. It was either a number 4 or a number 5, so the second thickest or third thickest setting. Once you've conditioned your white clay and got a slab that is a similar size to your blended clay, so your striped clay, put the striped clay on top of the white slab. So you want to make sure that there is white underneath every part of that strip, and then just brush it down from one direction so you don't get any air bubbles, and then cut away any excess white, put it away for a different project. cut as much away as you can. I'm using what's called a tissue blade here to cut away. It's a slightly flexible blade because it goes around those rounded corners quite nicely. So there you go, you can see I have my striped clay on top of a slab of white clay. You can use black, blue, green, whatever colour you like instead of white. I just really liked how the white turned out. Here I just flipped it over as I didn't like the way it was sitting in my pasta machine. No technical reason other than that. So you can see I've put that through at about a 4, so the third thickest setting on my pasta machine, and the white stretched a huge amount. So again, I'm putting it back on my ceramic tile and I'm going to cut away that excess white. I would probably get closer to the edges if I did this again, because I still left quite a lot of white around the stripes. I was just faffing about here. I don't know why I decided to clean my pasta machine in the middle of filming this tutorial, so just ignore me there. So I'm going one step down to a number 3 on my pasta machine, I think. And so you can see some of the white sticking out of the edges there, and you don't want that. Cut it off. I do end up cutting it off, but yeah, if you notice it when you're putting it through your pasta machine, cut it off. And I've gone down another step in my pasta machine. Basically what you're trying to achieve is a thickness that you can easily tear. So you just sort of want to tug on it and it should rip nicely. So I think that was down to a number 2 on my pasta machine. So you can see that I'm now just tearing the clay using my thumb and my fingers just to tear the clay, and you want to scatter the colours around quite a bit as that gives you the watercolour sort of look. So I think other people have achieved this technique using alcohol inks. I don't have alcohol inks and I wanted to achieve a similar kind of look using just clay, and I think this really works well. So you can see I've got green splotches and then I'm putting on top of blue, and you just keep going with this until you're happy. I never do more than 1 or 2 layers in height, so I'll put one piece down and on the edge I'll do a second piece. I don't stack a third piece on top of that, it's just a waste of clay, you lose the colours. If you've got a hole, tear off a really small piece instead. So this is what I was talking about before. Don't leave any white edges, it just creates a really ugly look. Totally ruins the watercolour feature. So yeah, just cut off the extra white that might have stretched out from your slab or your base. And then again, I'm just using a tissue blade. And that will go into my scrap pile and I'll use it to mix a beautiful colour later. Still just cutting off that white, trying to protect as much as the stripe slab that I can. I have sped it up, but I did want to show the whole tearing process, because I do know some people like to watch the entire tutorial and don't like to skip straight to the end, but if you're bored, press the fast forward button. Nothing happens until I finish tearing up this clay. Alright, so here I'm just going around and fixing all the edges, making sure that all the little bits of clay are really well stuck down. Alright, so now we're going to get another slab of white clay, which is going to act, I guess, as the backing to our earrings. So I've just conditioned up some white clay here to the depth of about 2 pop sticks, which is the thickest setting on my past machine folded over. So you could put the pop sticks either side of your clay and roll over it, or if you've got some depth guides, fondant guides, whatever you want to call them, put them alongside your clay and roll it out until you're happy with the thickness. So I think my thickness ends up being about 3 millimeters. Because the thickness of my past machine thickest setting folded over is just ever so slightly too thick, and you also want the clay to stick together. So I had some fun rolling my clay out to the 3 millimeters that I wanted, and we're coming back to our torn up pieces. So the good thing about letting them rest for a little while as well means that they aren't too soft when you go to pick them up. So you just want to get like your thinnest blade and your sharpest blade and run it along. It doesn't matter too much if you catch the edges like I have here, but yeah, just run it along until you can pick up all those torn pieces in one go. So that's why I was sitting there and pressing them together earlier in the video. And they might lift up like that, just push it back down, it's fine. Alright. So we're going to pick up the whole thing in a second. Just like to be extra sure that it's not stuck down to that tile anymore. So you can see they're quite fairly well stuck together, but they're not perfect. There might be little gaps. That's why I like to use the same backing colour slab as I did for my base colour on the torn pieces. So if I had a black backing on the torn pieces, I would have a black slab. Totally personal preference. Alright, so we want to lay our torn pieces on our 3 millimeter slab of clay. And just fix it up so that only the coloured bits are showing, not the white. What I really love about this technique is because you tear it, the white comes through and you get like those really rough, jagged edges, even though it's a completely smooth piece. So I'm just getting my depth guides again here, my 2 pop sticks thick, and rolling my torn pieces onto that slab. So yeah, just showing you 2 pop sticks thick. And you want to roll from one direction to the other to minimize the amount of air bubbles that you'll get. Then you just want to take it back down to that 3 millimeter depth, so my torn pieces end up being completely smooth. And I just got a bit of colour transfer, a bit of white from my roller from conditioning my slab earlier on some of the watercolour pieces. That's right, just go off and scrape them off with a sharp knife or an X-Acto blade. And I'm just using some of the other pieces that I had left over from when I lifted it off the tile to fill in any big gaps or spots of white that I don't like. Cleaning off my roller, and just keep rolling until you are happy with the depth. Happy that it's going to make a good size for earrings in this case. Cutting off any excess and just replacing it on another spot where there's some white that I don't like the look of. And you just really want to make sure like you're not putting green on top of green, it will just end up looking a bit boring. My favourite colour in this slab actually ended up being the pearl white. It really like brings it to life and gave a nice light blue when it mixed with the blue. It was lovely. And that is your finished watercolour piece. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe.